When you think of Greenland, what comes to mind? Probably ice, right? Maybe a bit of isolation. But online, wow, it's a whole different story. It's become this hotbed for debate about money, power, and the future. So what if we could listen in on all of those conversations at once? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're using data science to slice through the noise and figure out what people are really saying about this super important part of the world.
So that brings us to the big question, the real mystery here. When people are talking about Greenland online, what's the vibe? Do they see this incredible economic gold mine just packed with minerals and opportunity? Or is it something more tense, like a geopolitical chess piece in a new global power game? The answer, it's buried in literally thousands of online comments. And guess what? We've got the digital shovels to dig it up.
All right, so let's be clear. We're not looking at polished press releases or official news reports. No way. We're diving straight into the messy, unfiltered world of social media comments. Thousands of them. This is where the real talk happens, right? This is where we get to hear what people actually think in their own words.
So, how on earth do you make sense of all that? It sounds kind of complicated, but it breaks down into a pretty simple 4-step plan. First up, we got to collect all those comments. Then, step 2, we clean them up. Fix the typos, make sense of the slang, so our computers can actually read it. Third, and this is the cool part, we use machine learning to figure out the sentiment. Is a comment positive, negative, or just neutral? And finally, we map it all out to see what topics people are connecting together. It's like building a conversation web.
Okay, so with all that data crunched, what did we find on the surface? Well, at first glance, the results were surprisingly clear. I mean, it looked like a really optimistic, straightforward story. Almost too straightforward.
And this is the number that just jumped right off the page. 45.4%. Almost half. That's nearly half of all the comments we looked at coming back as positive. That's a huge piece of the pie. And it paints this picture of, overwhelming support and optimism. So let's look at the whole shebang here on this chart. You see that massive slice for positive? That's our 45%. Now add in the neutral comments, and suddenly you're looking at over 82% of the conversation that seems, pretty chill about the whole thing. And the negative comments, they look like this tiny, almost insignificant little sliver, less than 18%. Seems pretty open and shut, right?
But, and this is where it gets really good, is that the whole story? I mean, whenever the data looks this clean, you got to get a little suspicious, right? You have to ask yourself, are we missing something? Is that little 17.6% slice of negativity actually way more important than it looks? Could it be the key to understanding what's really going on?
And this is where the real data detective work starts. See, a standard analysis, a basic model, it kind of just follows the herd. And that's exactly what our first attempt did. It was fantastic at spotting all the positive and neutral stuff, the big majority, but it was basically deaf when it came to those critical comments. We needed a much smarter way to amplify those quieter, negative voices.
So here was the issue, plain and simple. Our first machine learning model, it only hit about 62% accuracy. And you might ask, why so low? Well, because it was biased. There were so few negative comments for it to learn from that it basically took a shortcut. It just figured, hey, if I guess positive or neutral, I'll be right most of the time. And it pretty much just ignored the negative opinions completely. So how do you fix that? With a really clever technique called Smote. The easiest way to think about it is like a digital volume knob for those quiet voices. Smote looks at that small group of negative comments and digitally creates new, synthetic but super realistic copies. This balances everything out, and it forces the model to pay just as much attention to the criticism as it does to all the praise.
And wow, the result? It was like night and day. Before Smote, we were stuck at that 62% accuracy, totally missing the point of the negative comments. But after, our overall accuracy jumped to around 75%, which is great. But here's the kicker. Our ability to pinpoint those crucial negative comments, it went through the roof. We could finally hear what they were saying.
Okay, so this is huge. Now we can actually hear all the different opinions properly. So the obvious next question is, what are these critical folks talking about? What's on their minds? To figure that out, we started mapping the whole conversation to see which ideas and topics were linked together.
And what we found was pretty revealing. When you looked at the core of the anxious and negative comments, the same 5 topics kept popping up again and again. Trump, China, Russia, minerals, and security. See a pattern here? This isn't a conversation about spreadsheets and economic forecasts. This is about geopolitics, plain and simple.
And this is really the key takeaway from that mapping.
people aren't just talking about Greenland's rare earth minerals in some kind of vacuum. No, the online conversation ties those resources directly, and I mean directly, to this high-stakes competition between the major world powers, the US, China, Russia. It's all connected.
So let's pull all of this together. What does it all mean? Well, we started out with this simple, happy, positive picture of the debate. But by digging just a little bit deeper, by amplifying those quieter voices, we found something way more complex, a real current of anxiety just under the surface.
And really, it boils down to two competing narratives playing out at the same time. You've got the optimistic view, which is all about economic potential, new opportunities, and diplomacy. And then, running right alongside it, you have the anxious view. And that's all about geopolitical rivalries and serious concerns about national sovereignty.
You know, there's a quote from the analysis that just nails it perfectly. It says that public opinion is positive, but it comes with a high degree of caution about the competition between the US, China, and Russia. And that's it, right there. It's not one or the other, it's both. The optimism is real, but it's an optimism that's constantly looking over its shoulder.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? What this whole thing with Greenland shows us is just how easy it is for the most critical, maybe even the most important voices to get completely drowned out by the majority. We had to use a special data science trick just to hear them. And that makes you wonder, in this crazy, noisy, online world we all live in, who else are we not hearing? And what does it take to make sure every voice really gets a chance to be heard?